Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. On a gray, blustery day, 3/4 of the way through the month of May. I wasn't trying to rhyme. 2025. I always throw that in there so when I watch this video in the future, I know about when I did it. Speaking of watching videos, the last video I did last Saturday was on the Clutch Turbo 400, the poor man's Lenko. And it is the first video that I've put out. I put out 640 some odd videos over the last 4 or 5 years. I've never had one get that many views. Typically, I put out a video in 24 hours because YouTube is on you all the time about your performance. You're telling you where you're at. Each video is either up or down. They're not all blockbusters, but the same amount of effort goes into every one of them. And if I get, 15 to 1,800 in a 24-hour period views, that's pretty good for me. And over time, because they're always available to be watched, it builds up. The Clutch Turbo 400 video in the first 24 hours had about 15,000 views, and now it's about 30,000 views. In less than a week. For me, that is blockbuster. Thank you for all the new viewers. I'll try not to disappoint you. Thanks for subscribing, because I got quite a few new subscribers. And apparently I did disappoint a few people, and this isn't not the first time I've got this complaint. The problem is I don't know how to fix it. On volume, I shoot with my iPhone, just like a lot of YouTubers. All they use is an iPhone. And occasionally, somebody will say they had trouble hearing me. I can't duplicate it. Everybody I know with a device hasn't been able to duplicate it. I don't know how to fix something that I can't, I don't know, even if I could recreate it, I guess, some people suggested a microphone. I've tried the microphone. I watch videos with people wearing microphones, and I got to tell you, it's not all it's cracked up to be. If you want to hear me breathing and huffing and puffing and crackling and volume coming and going, it's not as smooth as what we're listening to right now. So I'd like to keep doing what I'm doing, but moral of the story is welcome. And I do a lot of transmission videos, not as many as I used to, because I do so much more than that. I pretty much do whatever I'm doing in the shop each and every week. So, thanks for watching. Also mentioned in the Clutch Turbo 400 video is that I had bought 4 Turbo 400s. And the day before yesterday, I guess, I put the first one up in the holster here. And it had a yoke and everything in it. I can see it had a lot of oil. It had a dipstick. It had promise. What I was hoping to get out of this core is a usable case and the internals. But it's a core. And as I mentioned, I was a little concerned about where they'd been stored, etc. You never know what you're getting into, like a box of chocolates, as they say. So I popped the yoke out, and as I flipped it back, it was completely full of pretty decent red oil. That's a good sign, right? I noticed that there was a brazed hole had a deep pan on it. To me, as soon as I see that, it makes me think this was in a wrecking yard and they were stripping the powertrain out of something and they just drove a punch through the pan to get the oil out of it, probably thinking they were going to junk it. Obviously, it never made it that far. Externally looking at it, I could see that this little ear was broken off, but I usually trim those for header clearance, and this one I was going to. But I was hoping to get a nice Chevy case, Turbo 400 core to build. It is a short shaft. It has a tail housing with a broken bolt, but everything was hopefully going to be usable. This video is on my analysis of the failure of this transmission. So it had a hole in the pan, no big deal, a broken ear, we could deal with that. As soon as I pulled the pump out, I couldn't get the pump gasket off the pump. that typically means it's either been really hot, but most always it's had water in it at some point. So I started inspecting each piece as I took it out, and I could see like this pump is rusty in the cavity a little bit, perfectly usable, and you can see where the gears were stopped for X amount of time and water got in there. It just started to etch it. It's not, I mean, it's completely usable, it'll clean right up, but it's evidence this transmission had water in it. I didn't get too far because I popped out the forward clutch next, and it is completely smoked. And that's pretty rare on a Turbo 400. This is applied when you put it in gear and it stays on the whole time. So that was interesting, but I hadn't gone far enough to really determine why. Popped out the direct drum. The clutches were okay, but they were worn. There was no ridges left in them. They were still attached to the steel, but they were worn a lot, which is odd. But the intermediate told the story. The intermediate clutches, they are absolutely falling off. They've come unglued, and water does that. If you were to wash your parts in soap and water, your clutches will probably delaminate. So that told the story, but that's okay. We're replacing all this stuff. So far, it was still a usable transmission. Until I went to unbolt the center support and the bolt was loose. Okay, that's kind of odd. I took the bolt out and the hole is egg-shaped, front to back. I'd already pulled the valve body off and I couldn't get the valve body bolt out. Further evidence, it's had water. When this comes off hard, your transmission's probably been wet inside. Or really hot, but probably water. So, that's too bad, but I wasn't sure what I was going to find when I popped out the lower unit. What I found was somebody, I could tell somebody had been into this transmission before. They took the fretting ring, which sits in the case, and these lugs of the center support sit on the fretting ring. There's a groove in the case. We'll go over it with the camera. You've seen it before, but this snaps into the case. The center support sits on top. The bevel snap ring goes around to hold this side of the center support, and the bolt goes up through the middle. Well, somebody put this on the next groove down like they were trying to hold the rear band in. There is a little groove there, and it set there perfectly. It was compressed a lot right against the band and not doing its job. What that allowed to do over time is the bolt wore into the case and loosened up. For other reasons, I'm not going to reuse this bolt. It is kind of shiny and worn and a little, just kind of shiny where it was rubbing the case. But this particular one is drilled drastically off center. You probably can't see it, but the oil feed hole that applies the intermediate clutches is way off center. So anytime I see that, which is pretty rare, usually they're pretty well centered. It makes it look weak, like the threads are going to give out. It's right against the inside of the threads. But most of the time when the metal parts start thrashing back and forth, they survive. This is all perfectly usable, but the aluminum takes it hard. The case is junk. So, tragic. I'll probably clean it up and offer it to somebody to use as a dummy. And as I look at the center support, the center support and the rest of the lower unit, there's rust. Water set. It didn't hurt anything. Again, I can clean it up. But no question, water infiltrated the transmission probably when it was junk the first time. And it sat around, and then somebody saw it. I mean, had the pan off, maybe had the transmission apart, but that wouldn't make any sense because they could have it apart and still, because the clutches look nice, put it all back together like that. But I don't know the exact time frame, but it had water, the clutches got wet, and then somebody tried to run it, and all they did is delaminate. That's why the forward smoked. Because anytime I strip a transmission, you have a set of smoked clutches, you got to find out why. You can't just put it back together and hope it doesn't happen again. Everything happens for a reason. So in this case, I'm pretty sure I found no other reason why it would smoke the forward. And then when I saw the delamination, it was pretty obvious what happened. There's the egged out center support bolt hole. And the snap ring was down here, if I get my hand out of the way, not here where it belongs. They had it down here. And that's what caused the destruction. It also spun the triangle washer in the back of the case and ruined the case lugs. Not good, it's even bent. And you can see on the other side where it spun in the case. It's not supposed to be like that. So while my goal of stripping and rebuilding this particular transmission as a whole, you know, strip it, clean it, put it all back together with new stuff, I can use most all the internals in one of the many 8-bolt cases I have with no bell housing, or if I hunt around and find another Chevy bell housing, if that's what I need. Not everybody wants to pop for an aftermarket bell housing on every build, so its life as it came from the factory is over, but it will relive most of it. So I will pile this on the bench behind me, kind of all together, and next I will strip. There's a TH400 in the pile, and I can use the output shaft out of this or another one if I need to, and the shorter tail housing, and make, hopefully, if that one's any good, you know, complete my goal of just building a transmission for a nice guy that wants a street transmission. So that was my only goal, was to build a nice street-driven transmission, and this one is not going to cut it. So in my next, probably my next video, most definitely my next video, I'm going to strip with the camera on, because people love that apparently. They like to watch me take out nuts and bolts. Strip the clutch turbo and see what it's all about. I've been staring at the case where it's broken in a couple spots. The case isn't cut down as far as I normally cut it for an aftermarket bell housing. So if I just trim it as such, it's probably usable. So I'm interested to see what's inside. It may be a ball of rust, but just because we'll do it live, hopefully the audio is good and you'll be able to watch and see what's going on, because occasionally you got to give those people what they want. I like to discuss things in detail, provide a lot of information that doesn't usually happen when you're busy doing stuff. You have to stop and think, or at least I do. I'm not that smart really, so I can't really lay the knowledge on you and be concentrated on what I'm doing at the same time, if that makes any sense. So I'm only human, and a lot human. Have a nice day. Again, welcome to those new, and thank you to all the people that have been here the whole time. And I'll catch you soon, a couple days.